Okay, welcome back to another episode of Cartoon Insiders with Doug and Candy.
I'm the Doug one.
I'm the candied one.
So here we are, and what are we talking about today?
I thought it would be good to talk about voice directing because that's fun.
Yeah,
I think it's fun.
I do too. I mean, we've talked about before how I get stressed about the schedule.
Yeah. Remind me not to eat a bunch of flaxseed crackers right before I have to talk.
Do you have seeds in your teeth?
My mouth is so dry right now.
Oh.
It like sucks out all the moisture, the flackers, and I eat them every day because they're good for you. But damn, there's no moisture in my mouth.
I can't decide if we're trying to pick up Flackers as a sponsor or if we just lost them forever.
I just said I eat them every day.
Yeah, no, that's
They're
the good
good
part.
for you.
And they're good for you. Mm-hmm. The dry mouth part.
Yeah, it's just don't eat a bunch of them right before you have to talk.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You don't want to have a wet mouth either. You want to have just the right level of mouth moisture. Mm-hmm. Speaking of voice acting and voice direction.
Oh yeah, that's important.
That's very important. They used to have people take a bite out of an apple. Was one of the things. I remember people
and then chew it while they're talking.
Yeah, and then just have a mouthful for the entire.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a hugely important part of the process, and we like doing it. Mm-hmm. We like the records.
Do you like doing it as much as I do?
I do not like it as much as you do. As I said, I get stressed about the schedule. It's better than it used to be in the sense that there isn't as much time pressure as there used to be. Mm-hmm. So for me at least, most shows used to do group records. Mm-hmm. And you would get the whole cast or most of the cast in there at once, and you'd read through the whole thing once, an actual rehearsal, and then you would go through it and do it. And it actually takes less time that way, but you schedule less time when you do it that way, because you probably want to do the whole thing in like 4 hours.
Right.
So what has happened since then is we've gotten more into recording people individually. Mm-hmm. And I know some voice directors prefer that because you're just having to like manage one person and focus in on that one character and like really hone that. But on the other hand, you lose that kind of group dynamic and that energy that you get with a group record.
Right.
And what you do usually is instead of having like 1 4-hour record, you have like 7 1-hour records.
Right.
That maybe don't go for a full hour, but
Does it work out better for the actors so they don't have to be there as long?
Yep. Yeah, they get paid the same, and they're there for a shorter time. So I've been on shows where the actors were sort of mildly lobbying for individual records instead of the cast records, but then people usually enjoy the full cast records more because they get to hang out with the other actors, and it's
or they have to hang out with
or
you.
they have to, depending on the interrelationships. But I mean, like in my experience, especially back when we did more cast records, it was also the period where there were like 40 people who did like 80% of the voices in cartoons.
Right.
They all knew each other and they worked with each other and they all pretty much got along really well. Like it was sort of a little party. And it was for me, when I wasn't voice directing, when I was just there witnessing it, it was sort of the high point of the process, because like you'd done all this stuff and you got to see it like kind of happening in real time. And then of course the animation process, which comes after the voice recording, is long and tedious, and you see things in little drips and drabs. So the recording was kind of the fun part. It is, for me, less fun when we do people individually, but on the other hand, you can like really home in on details of the performance.
When you watch the final result, do you think that the performance suffers at all from having it done individually?
Yes.
I know when I'm watching and like a conversation between Gen and Usagi from Samurai Rabbit, I know those two were never in a room together, but they're having a conversation.
Yeah.
I introduced Alex Lee and Darren Barnett at the cast and crew party.
That's right.
So
at the very end.
yeah. So Gen and Usagi were never in the same room together.
Yeah. I mean, but of course, well, first off, I do think you get a better result from a group recording because you get that energy of people playing off each other. You usually have the opportunity, not always, but usually to do a read through at the beginning and people kind of like know what they're going to do. Not everyone likes to do that. I know some people like really want to come in and read cold.
They just want to raw dog it.
And some people like kind of have to. Like I haven't been there, but I'm told that John Benjamin's performance in Bob's Burgers, like part of how they get that performance is he hasn't seen the script.
That's
He
fun.
comes in and reads it. So you get those occasional things where he like kind of drags out a word. He kind of gets stuck, and it's because he's literally reading it for the first time.
That's awesome.
That's what I've been told.
But it works with his style.
It works fantastically. And by the way, I've never heard anyone say like that he doesn't want to rehearse or anything. It's just how they do it for that character, and it works great.
Yeah.
But I mean, occasionally you'll see stuff, you know, when the actors have been recorded individually, where you're like you'll hear a read and go, he did not hear that read that she gave.
Right.
That was not in his head.
That's what
Yeah.
it's like. The inflection and everything and choice of words is so it's so specific
It's a
to what
finicky
people
thing.
say.
Yeah.
And that's why all of that lands on the voice director,
Exactly.
because you have to remember how the other side of the conversation
Yeah.
goes.
And the part that will break your brain is sometimes you have to pre-member because you've already recorded the response and
Right.
then you're recording the line before and you have to remember what the response was
Right.
so that you can lead into that correctly.
And then there's usually at least 3 reads. They do it
Yeah.
3 different ways. So you have to remember which one you chose, like which one you circled.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just for people who haven't been there, usually what happens is, I mean, there's no one way to do it, but like usually what you kind of fall into this rhythm where you do 3 reads of each line when you're working individually with an actor. And you do circle takes. So they'll do 3 reads of a line and the voice director will be like B. They'll pick A, B, or C.
Right.
Maybe there's 4 or 5, so you might pick D. And then someone writes that down. Sometimes it's the voice director. Sometimes there isn't anyone there to do it. There's a kind of a system where you do like lines for each of the takes, and then you circle the line that's A, B, or C. So it's once you see people do it, it's pretty clear how to do it. But it's an additional mental task.
Yes.
Especially if you're having to keep track of that stuff yourself, if you don't have someone there who's doing the circle takes. And if you do have someone there who's doing the circle takes, you have to hope that they get everything exactly right.
Right.
But
it's not like they erase the other takes.
Very often, like you'll go back and they'll cut all the lines together that you picked, and you listen to it, and you're like, I know there was a better take for that one.
Right.
I picked the wrong one, and then you listen to the other ones. Also, when you're recording an actor who's having a dialogue with another actor, and you recorded the other actor previously in a separate session, you can play back their stuff for that actor so they can respond to it. But I feel like when we watch things that we've worked on, we will occasionally go, oh, that line did not sound like it was in response to the line before it. But I doubt that most people are noticing.
Yeah.
But there are a million things in a show that you might not notice. That's the dog skittering around. But if enough of them are wrong, it'll kind of wear down your enjoyment.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think we were wrong to pull up the carpet in here and put down wooden floor?
I think we were wrong to get Klaus those little tap shoes.
Yeah, we should never have taught him to tap dance.
So maybe he'll settle down.
Yeah, he was in his bed, and then he's like, you know what? This bed ain't good enough.
Yeah, you pretty much have the options of toenails on the floor or snoring when the dog's in the room. But you know what? He's in the picture. He's in the picture for the podcast.
So he is part of the podcast.
He's got to be part of it.
And him's such a good guy.
He is.
He's just the best guy. We got him at the Castaic Animal Shelter.
Yes.
And it was a good decision.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, he was our guy right away.
Yeah.
Got him. He was about 8 years old and couldn't really see.
Yeah, he has like 25% of his vision.
Yeah. So people, it was hard for them to get anyone to take him because people typically want a dog that can see.
That's not going to run into the furniture.
Yeah. But we were prepared.
Yeah, he's doing a good job.
Yeah, he gets a lot of eye drops
Yeah.
and eye ointment and things.
He
And
goes to the eye doctor.
we're managing it.
And they're like, which one looks better, A or B? Oh, yeah.
They have an eye chart, but it's just pictures of cats.
Yeah. He's like, "Grr." No, he actually gets along well with the cats.
Yeah. Speaking of our dog who's here, one of the more fun things to do in a record is when you need to record animal sounds. Because as you recall, I think we've mentioned this before on Samurai Rabbit, we had trouble figuring out who was going to play his
Spot.
Yeah, his pet dinosaur, basically, who's basically a dog. And we tried out so many people for that.
We tried out everyone.
Everyone who was already in the cast, because we were like, it would be nice if we could do this without like bringing in an extra person. And then it turned out to be
Darren Barnett. Although D. Bradley Baker would have done a good job.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, D. Bradley Baker does. If you hear an animal in anything, there's a good chance it's D. Bradley Baker.
Or Frank Welker.
It used to be Frank Welker. It used to be Frank Welker. Like literally, like any movie from the 80s, if something roars, it's probably Frank.
Yeah, or a monkey.
Yeah. Like all the roar sounds in like Willow, I think, are Frank. And there was another guy, I think Hal Rail, who did some, but it was mostly Frank. And now Dee has become the heir to that throne.
Yeah. Dee is the voice of Klaus the fish in American Dad.
Yes. And many animals and many things.
I like to think if our dog Klaus talked, he would sound like D. Bradley Baker.
That would make sense. But that's that. I remember having Frank Welker do turkey sounds one time because they just aren't. There are a fair number of people who can do animal sounds in general, but turkeys are pretty specific. And he did. So we're like. So it's this huge group of turkeys. So we need you to do a bunch of turkeys, and we'll like overlap them, and it'll sound like a big group.
What show was this?
This was The Weekenders.
Oh, okay.
And Frank did. He started going, and he stopped, and we were like, Frank, how did you do like 5 turkeys at once? It was one of the weirdest things I've ever heard. He was clearly making multiple sounds at the same time. It was unfathomable. But I think we did maybe 2 tracks, and it sounded like 20 turkeys.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
You just never know who's got the talent, right?
And I don't know how he discovered he could do this, but...
You never know until you try.
Famously, Frank Welker used to do 3 dogs singing Happy Birthday at the same time for people, and I never heard him do it in person because apparently it kind of hurt.
Oh.
So he would only do it like on special occasions. But I've heard people say that it was really uncanny.
Yeah.
Because it was clearly 3 voices all at the same time. Like a Tuvan throat singer.
Nice.
Like, how did he do it?
Practice, I guess?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I thought you were going to say what was real fun was when you go to the recording studio and they have a dog.
That is also super fun.
That's always a delight when you show up somewhere and there's a dog or a cat where you weren't expecting one.
Yeah, there was the studio we recorded some Puss in Boots at. They had a studio dog.
Yeah, that was so fun.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my God, a dog!
Oh, and you remember...
Jane Lynch?
Yeah. Jane Lynch came in and started evaluating the dog.
She comes in, she starts petting the dog, and then she starts judging it like she's a judge on Best in Show.
And then we were like, oh, she's doing a Best in Show reference.
Yeah, but she was sort of not completely by herself, but she wasn't performing.
Yeah.
She was just having a moment with the dog that we witnessed.
Yeah.
And that was funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cree Summer used to bring her dog into recordings.
Yeah.
And it was, I have never seen, like, people, I mean, this was a studio dog. Mm-hmm. He would come, he or she, I don't remember the gender of the dog. Let's say he. He would come
All
in.
dogs are boys.
And sit there in the studio where she was recording next to her and not make a sound.
Unlike Klaus.
Yeah.
Klaus couldn't do that.
Klaus just breathing is
Yeah.
he hears his name and he's like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. I don't remember the dog's name, but he was unbelievable. Because, like, at the beginning, you're sort of like, okay, well, we'll see how this goes.
Right.
But, yeah. I mean, one of the things, of course, when you're voice director that you have to worry about is extraneous noises.
Right.
You want to get a clean record, unlike what we're getting, Mr. Tappy Toes. Mm-hmm. And
what if you pull his bed over by me? Maybe he'll get in his bed.
But, you know, you have to watch out for, like, jewelry sounds. Sometimes bracelets will clank together. Famously, there was an actress who I feel like I shouldn't name who was wearing a shirt that was making a lot of noise, and they told her, and she just took it off, did the whole record without her shirt.
It was Carol Channing.
It was Carol Channing.
I mean,
I guess we can say
the best part of the story.
Yeah, you know.
Because you might be picturing like some young woman or something. No, it was Carol Channing.
Yeah, like,
because she had lost all her fucks.
Yep.
And she was just like,
she did not care.
Another person who I witnessed taking her shirt off is Danny Trejo, but he just felt like taking his shirt off.
Yeah.
He was like, woo.
He's got some amazing tattoos. Mm-hmm. He should take his shirt off. I want to see the tats.
We want to see your belly.
Danny is one of my absolute favorite people to work with. He is a sweetheart, and he's super smart. And I think he's super talented, but he's very self-deprecating. Oh. Like, he almost doesn't, like, he acts like he's not an actor. He's just like, I don't know, tell me what to do. But he's really good.
He's really good. And
super funny.
He lacks inhibitions.
He does.
And he's just like, oh, I love this sound. That's part of the reason I'm addicted to lip balm.
Is the little noise.
It's the little clicky noise.
That was a lip balm clicking shut.
Yes. It was Bonnie Bell Lip Smacker's Breezy Teasy.
Okay. Is it tea?
It's like iced tea.
Okay.
It's like a little lemony.
I do think that lack of inhibitions is an important part of voice acting.
That is what I learned when I did improv at LA Connection, now on Magnolia Boulevard in Burbank. Was like I'm not a born performer, and anytime I was ever on stage, I had terrible stage fright. And when I did improv, Klaus, you're just determined to keep walking, aren't you? One of the most useful things that I learned there was when Kent Scove, the guy who runs the place.
That was Klaus bumping into something.
Yeah. We need to get him some better glasses.
Yeah.
Kent Scove said, you look stupid if you are only halfway doing something because you're embarrassed. If you want to keep from looking stupid, just go slide in on both cheeks.
Yeah.
Don't half-ass it.
The weird answer is, if you want to avoid looking stupid, the best thing to do is look really stupid.
Right.
Like, if you are worried about looking stupid, it's
it's just, you're just being self-conscious, and you're calling attention to that. But if you just commit to what you're doing, it's fine.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, and that is one of the most useful things anyone has ever said to me.
Yeah.
And it had a big impact on everything, not just improv.
I mean, you hear it a lot in experienced voice actors. There's like their voice isn't quite fully coming out.
Right.
And usually it's just like, I mean, they just need someone to like tell them a few times, and then
Right.
like you get the hang of it. It's not that difficult to do, but like just fully commit to, well, like whatever choice you make, fully commit to that choice. If it's horribly wrong, that's fine.
Yeah.
We'll do something else. I mean, that was I think I have mentioned this before, but voice directing Sigourney Weaver on that one project, she 100% committed to every weird choice, and it was amazing. Like,
Yeah, and she's an amazing actress.
yeah, I mean,
So-
she and like one of those people who is like an amazing on-camera actress and has obviously a fantastic career, but it's, you just want to say, if you ever just want to do voiceover, you could totally, this could be your whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we keep saying that about Adam Lambert too,
Yeah. Yeah. Well.
who was amazing until Dark and Grim.
Yeah.
Definitely,
As the devil.
if he wants a second career in voiceover, he's got it.
Yeah. He took it and just ran with it and
Yeah.
made it his own thing.
Yeah.
Man.
And I mean, I've worked with people who are incredible on-camera actors who have trouble getting it across just vocally.
Right. I mean, that's a different art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to say, if I didn't know anything about the person, I would rather cast someone who was an experienced singer than someone who was an experienced on-camera actor but hadn't done voiceover. It's almost closer to singing than it is to like on-camera or stage acting.
Especially when it's ADR, because the timing is
Yeah.
so important.
Yes.
And that is baked in to a singer.
Yeah.
A good singer, anyway. Not necessarily a karaoke singer like me.
But it's true. I mean, the really great voice actors. I mean, I remember working with Jim Cummings once, and he was just doing a promo for us. And it was like, it was a 30-second promo, and he did it the first time, and he was like, I'm sorry, that was 32 seconds. And we were like, you can't possibly know how, oh, wow, it was 32
Wow.
seconds. Like, he knew precisely how long he had taken. And he was like, should I do it in 30 or do you need it like in 28? And we were like, yeah, like 27, 28 so we can have ins and outs there. And we did it a second time. And it was exactly the
Wow.
length. Yeah. And he could also look at something and go, this is not going to be 30 seconds. This is too long. You're going to have to, trim. But yeah, there's just that sense of time.
I love it when people are just so good at their
Yeah.
job. That's,
And Jim is a drummer,
oh,
is all about time.
right.
You are a time master if you're a
Yeah.
drummer.
See, I'm a drummer, but I'm not a great drummer. So,
I mean, to be fair, I haven't heard him in performance. I imagine he's a great drummer.
Yeah, I'm
I have
sure
heard
he
him.
is.
He used to bring in drumsticks to the recording, and like in between stuff, he would kind of like tap out on the music stand, and like it was clear that he was
oh,
good.
yeah, because sometimes if you need to drum,
Yeah.
you got to drum, and it's just easier if you have your drumsticks with you.
I think this is like a way of working through excess energy for him, and just like a little fun thing that he did.
You want to get back in your bed? Get in your bed.
Klaus, do you want to tap dance some more, or do you want to have a snooze here?
Get in your bed with
Okay.
your Godzilla blanket.
He's
and
getting
your
in his
stuffed
bed,
bunny.
and I'm holding my hand over the corner of the coffee table so he doesn't bash his face on it.
Little man.
And so now he's licking my hand.
Oh,
This is our life. So, as we were saying, we used to do more group records. And we had started doing, I mean, in my experience, I know a lot of people were already doing individual records back when I was doing group records. But in my experience, we started doing more and more individual records before COVID. It was not really a COVID thing. But then when COVID came along and we had to record everyone individually, it became clear that this was doable. And I think it became really clear to all the actors that it was preferable for them. Because they
Right.
could book maybe 4 or 5 things in a day sometimes, not just 2.
right.
So, that's where we are. I think it's a little bit different mindset for everyone. Just trying to keep that other side of the conversation, that other side of the acting in your head when you're there by yourself.
I know you always liked having everyone there together,
Yeah.
but you lost that fight.
No, I did. I mean, I don't even have that fight anymore.
Yeah. Oh, no, I know.
It's like if there's an opportunity to do it, I'll say I would love to.
Yeah.
Because some people actually don't like it.
Right.
Like some people find that like it gets too chaotic and they can't focus on what they're doing and they have trouble. I mean, because sometimes, you know, a group of actors, especially if you're doing comedy, like can get like super wacky together and it can get a little bit out of control. It's like trying to get the class to quiet down sometimes.
Right.
But I mean, they're professionals and it's not going to be a ruckus. But there are times
They
like
start wrestling.
Someone like John DiMaggio will go off on some bit and just be riffing, and everyone just loses their minds laughing. And what are you going to do? You're not going to be like, John, stop being the funniest thing I've ever heard.
Right.
Stop it.
Right.
You know, you got to let it go a little bit.
Yeah.
He'll do that with no audience, though. He'll be the only one in the booth and do like 5 minutes of the best thing you've ever heard.
You got to have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have never been involved in a record like that, but I have sat in on those.
Yeah.
Like I was Puss in Boots. Like I had written a Puss in Boots, and I was allowed to sit in, and so I've seen it.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad I got to see the last dying embers of group records.
But that wasn't that long ago, but although on Puss in Boots, I mean, we would usually have maybe half of the cast.
Right.
Like we weren't able to get the whole cast in together. I feel like Dave the Barbarian might have been the last show I did where we routinely had almost the whole cast.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they'd be like a guest person, like someone who was doing character just for that episode. And we would
Come on, jump up.
oh no, okay, we're gonna have to take a little break here because the dog has gotten a hold of a water bottle.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, Klaus is done with his water bottle. His favorite thing is to kill water bottles.
Once he gets the cap off, it's less interesting for him. So,
well, it doesn't make as much pained noise anymore. So we were talking about doing group records on Dave the Barbarian.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we'd have a guest star, someone we'd bring in individually. We usually recorded Estelle Harris by herself, mostly because she was older, and we'd often be recording in the studio upstairs, and so we would schedule a separate recording so we could do her downstairs, just so she wouldn't have to go up and down, because it seemed like it'd be easier.
And what else was she in?
She was George's dad on Seinfeld.
She was George Costanza's mom.
Mom, yeah.
On Seinfeld.
Yes, Mom.
I think you remember that show differently
Apparently
than I do.
I do. No, of course his dad was Jerry Stiller.
Yeah.
So no, she was his mom, and she sort of like was famous for that.
Yeah.
And she was she was someone who it's like I was already writing that character, and someone said, you know who'd be good for this is Estelle Harris, and I was like, I have been writing an Estelle Harris character this whole time and not realizing it.
Oh,
she was so perfect.
Did you have someone else in mind while you were writing it?
I don't remember, but she was great, and she was someone who sometimes someone's just so perfect for a part that you can't.
But
you can't pass it up.
When you were writing the part of the sword, were you like, this should be an older lady?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it was sort of like, I was picturing like your older aunt,
Carol Channing.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, I mean, it would have been someone like that. It was like an older family member who like loves you, but is maybe a little naggy. It's actually Estelle in the script. Originally, she called him Dave, and Estelle was like, "Can I call him David?" And it's like, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that there's you want to have that back and forth with the actors. I mean, the actors obviously have something to add, even if it's not ad libs and punching stuff up, which they often do. Just their perspective on things. I mean, many times actors will have like little ad libs and things that they put in, or mannerisms, speech pattern things, and then you start incorporating them into the characters you're moving forward. Klaus.
Now Klaus is stepping on the music stand.
Yeah. Klaus, I wish you would have a little nap now. But I feel that's not happening. But, you know, I mean, this is part of, like, what's fun about doing this is that it's collaborative. And it's easy, especially, I think, when you're starting out, if you've written a script and you hear it a certain way in your head, to just keep going until you get that read.
Right.
And that is a habit everyone needs to break themselves of. You
Yeah.
need to be open to the read that the actor brings to it.
Right. That's the thing about it is, like, I don't want everyone to do it exactly the way I want to,
Yeah.
because if you let people be themselves, they're going to bring so much more, and it's going to be better than what you imagine.
Yeah.
Or you can be a control freak and it'll be not as good.
Yeah. And I mean, there are definitely control freaky people out there, and sometimes it works out okay, but I'm not in favor of it.
It works out okay, but you never get to that transcendent place.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, you do need to constantly ask yourself, is this read wrong, or is it just not what I was expecting?
Right.
Like, is it not what was in my head?
Right.
Is that what's nagging at me about it? And like, try to listen to stuff with fresh ears as much as you can. And like, that's why a lot of times you'll pick a take in the record and then you go back and listen to it later and you're like, wow, I completely picked the wrong take because like my head was just in the wrong place.
Yeah.
But when you hear everything put together,
Yeah.
and that's, you know.
And also voice records are grueling. And I mean, you just get exhausted.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, anytime, like, from, you know, it's one of our own shows and we hear something and we're like, oh, that read was wrong. It's just like, you know, that was at the end of the day.
Yeah. And listening is hard.
Yeah, it is. And like focused listening
Yeah.
for a long, I mean, you've been in school, you know, like that kind of focused listening is
No,
hard to do for a whole day.
Whenever
sometimes.
it was voice record day, I always knew I was going to sleep well that night. Because it was just...
It can be super draining. It used to be more fun for me when I wasn't, when like I was just a writer on the show. Because like, I mean, sometimes they don't even let you go to the record, but
Right.
usually at Disney, you'd get invited to the record. Just like going to the record and watching and like not really having to deal with anything. Like every now and then, you know, maybe you'd offer a word or two of commentary, but very little. And then you also got to like meet famous people sometimes, so it was pretty fun. Pretty fun time. I've told you about smoking outside the recording studio with Tim Curry pointing at his picture on the wall. And I at that point in my life had not seen Rocky Horror Picture Show. So I was familiar with Tim Curry's, like all of his other work basically, but just not that. So I think I was less starstruck because of that. Because it was like, oh, it's the guy from Congo and The Shadow and,
Right.
and Clue. Who is, you know, I mean, he's a great voice actor also, but it's hard to know sometimes how to behave around famouses.
Yeah, but hanging out with Tim Curry, that just sounds like an ultimate life experience that I have not had the pleasure of experiencing myself.
Yeah.
Because when I had the opportunity to meet Tim Curry, I started crying.
Yeah.
So I stayed away from him so that I wouldn't make him uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But because I was so, I was like a 2-year-old at the end of the day at Disneyland when you're just overstimulated and exhausted.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to inflict that on him.
It's hard sometimes to like, you know, you have to like, you sort of have to pretend that you have no idea who they are, but then also like acknowledge that you know who they are.
Right. But you can't make people uncomfortable.
That's
the thing, because they're here to work.
Yeah.
And it's not a fan situation. It's
Yeah.
not like at Comic-Con and, you know, they're there for a meet and greet or whatever. You just blubber all over them, all you want, whatever.
That's what it's for.
I don't recommend that, but it's like that's a fan experience.
Yeah.
They're in the right headspace for it.
Yeah.
I hope. But they're expecting that there. But when they're at work, they don't. They're there to work, and you can't be a butthead.
Really cannot fanboy, cannot fangirl.
Yeah, we were in a meeting the other day with one of the most famous actresses in the entire world, and you just have to be like, you have to be cool.
And she was definitely more nervous.
She was
than we were.
She was a little nervous, but this was a different kind of situation for her. So yeah, but she was very nice.
But I know I'm trying to think. I know I got Patrick Warburton's autograph.
Oh, okay. Wait a minute.
But yeah,
there's a DVD in the garage of the Tick that says "Hey, Apple," and it's signed Patrick Warburton.
Yeah.
Would you like to explain that?
Okay. There's going to be some bleeps in here because what it actually says is, "Hey, Apple, thanks for nothing."
Okay.
Patrick. So I had been voice directing Patrick on This Was the X's on the show for a while at this point. It wasn't his first day in. So, we had been hanging out quite a bit, and I really liked the Tick. I like every iteration of the Tick. And so I was like, could I get you to sign this? And he was like, sure. And he was like, so, well, it's something to Doug. And I was like, can you make it out to Apple? And he did not want to do it.
Because he's nice.
Because he's super nice. And it's like, I understand, like, you don't want someone to, like, come across this thing and be like, wow, Patrick must be a jerk. Why would he write that? But I was like, no, it'll be funny. So he made it worse. So it was obviously funny.
Right.
Because if it was just, hey, Apple,
you'd wonder.
You would wonder. But yeah, it was great. And he's super funny and like a fantastic storyteller, which is, that's what we're all doing is telling stories.
Yes.
You get someone in who's a great storyteller.
Wait a minute. Back up. Did you or did you not tell Patrick? Oh, no, I have everyone sign it to Hey Apple. It's my thing. To get him to do it?
I did.
You lied.
I lied to Patrick a little bit.
You lied to Patrick.
Although, in my defense, that would have been pretty cool if I had actually done that. If I just had a whole collection of celebrity signatures that were all to
Hey Apple. Yeah. Oh my God, that reminds me.
Oh, there's going to be so much bleeping. You know how long it's going to take me to bleep all this?
A whole lot.
Easily 7 minutes.
Yeah. When I was in high school, I think like my junior year, there were a group of guys that all hanged out. They all hung out together in one of my classes, and they were all, "Hey, Candy, sign our yearbook and yearbooks." So I signed. It was like 3 guys, 5 guys, whatever. I signed all of their yearbooks. Dear so-and-so, you're the only guy for me. Don't tell blank, 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 and blank. And I wrote that in the same thing in all of their yearbooks. And was not interested in any of them because they were teenage boys.
Yeah.
And they all, like, when they read it, they, like, laughed and closed their yearbook and went about their business. But one of them saw that, turned bright red, slammed his yearbook shut, and then, like, never spoke to me again.
Wow.
Yeah. That was bad.
Okay.
It was like, dude.
You always run a risk with that kind of humor.
He did not get yeah.
One year, Tad Stones, creator of Darkwing Duck, gave everyone Christmas cards, and every Christmas card said, "Don't tell anyone else, but you're my favorite."
Oh, see, it's in that spirit.
That's a good joke. That's good.
It would have been a good joke if Ian hadn't
hadn't
like took us
misunderstood
serious
it.
and lost his mind. It
And
was
then,
so weird.
And
Anyway,
voice acting.
voice acting.
Voice direction.
So I love that Danny Cooksey was the voice
Yeah.
of Dave the Barbarian. Dave the Barbarian being an important character to both of us.
Yes.
And then Danny Cooksey was someone who I watched on TV when I was a kid.
I always remember him from Terminator 2. Cause
T2.
T2, because he was the main kid's friend who was like hanging out with him and lied for him and stuff. But yeah, I mean, he did a lot of stuff as a young actor. And we had trouble casting that part. We auditioned so many people. At one point, I remember I was really thinking about Kevin McDonald from Kids in the Hall, because he has that kind of voice where he can sound like he's screaming without actually raising his voice. I don't know how he does it, but I'd worked with him on something else. Oh, actually okay. Well, I wrote an episode of Earthworm Jim specifically with him in mind, and then they wouldn't let us make that episode.
Okay, I've been waiting for you to say the role that Danny Cooksey was introduced to most of us in. He was Sam on Different Strokes.
Oh, right, yes.
Yeah, us older folks.
Sorry.
When Gary Coleman started getting a little older and wasn't as cute anymore, they brought in Danny Cooksey as the little red-haired kid.
That's right, which is kind of funny because another great voice actor is Robbie Rist, who was brought in as Cousin Oliver on the Brady Bunch.
The cute little kid on the Brady Bunch, yeah.
Another fantastic voice actor who I had do an animal voice once, and he didn't know he could do animal voices.
Oh, see, look at you.
I was like, this is a weird story, but they made me add a monkey to an episode of Weekenders because they said the episode wasn't funny enough.
Oh,
it was too serious.
So you had to add
the
solution.
We want you to add a monkey, and I started laughing, and they were laughing, and we were all laughing together about this ridiculous idea. And then we sort of calmed down, and they were like, "But we really do want you to add a monkey." Like everyone knew it was kind of ridiculous, and I was like, "That's fine. I mean, we'll add a monkey." I mean, there was a quirky older character, and we gave him a pet monkey.
Were these the same executives on the first season of Friends?
No. Why?
Okay.
Oh,
because
the monkey.
There was a monkey
There
for
was a
some
monkey.
reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I asked Robbie to do it, and I was like, I don't know how you feel about this, but I just kind of thought it would be funny because they forced them to add Cousin Oliver to the show, and I was forced to add a monkey. If the monkey were the voice of Cousin Oliver.
Did you bring him on specifically to be the monkey?
Yes.
You did?
Yeah, and he was like, I can't really do animal voices, and I was like, yeah, you'll be good enough.
Yeah.
And then he was good.
So...
But it was one of those, like, it was a really, really inside joke.
Wow.
That no one was ever going to get.
Okay, I just want to point out, Klaus fell asleep, so it's not tip-taps anymore, it's snoring.
Yeah.
Danny Cooksey's been in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, Danny is great. We had like I was saying, we had a hard time casting. Why I went far afield. We had a hard time casting that part. We were considering Andy Richter at one point, who actually was really good, but he had his sitcom at that time, and it was hard.
Wow, Robbie Rist was also in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, Robbie is he's a very, very working guy.
Yeah.
Also a musician, kind of an amazing musician.
That's cool.
Yeah. But so Danny came in, and it was just like there were all these people we were considering. Maybe this person, and like Andy Richter is kind of a name. Kevin McDonald's kind of a name. I feel like there was someone better known that they were like, maybe we could get this person, and I was like, wow,
Was it Keanu Reeves?
I don't. It was not, but I don't remember who it was. But then Danny Cooksey came in, and it was like, that's him. There he is. That's the guy. Like, it needed to be someone whose voice didn't match that big body,
right?
But also like had its own he'd have his own strength, but like not a physical strength.
Right.
And I think Danny really personified that well.
He did.
And at the beginning, we were thinking that Dave would be more of an intellectual character, and then he wound up being more of a boob. Mm-hmm. And Danny was great with that, and he handled that transition very well.
Excellent.
Yeah. Now it's one of my favorite characters and one of my favorite performances ever. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
And everyone was great on that cast. I mean, we had Tress MacNeille, who's in everything. Mm-hmm. She's on The Simpsons.
Is she Amy on Futurama?
No,
that's
Amy is.
Lauren Tom.
Yeah, Amy was Lauren Tom.
Yes,
Tress MacNeille
was Linda.
Yeah, she was on.
Yeah.
Futurama as well as Simpsons and every other show that's ever happened. I mean, she was on Animaniacs. She's in everything. And Kevin Michael Richardson and Erica Luttrell. It's just a fantastic cast.
Yeah.
We had a fun time. And Frank Welker. Mm-hmm. I almost forgot. Frank Welker came in the first time. He did Faffy, the dragon. And the first time we recorded it, we had him make a bunch of sounds and chop them up and remix them and just to make it sound as weird as possible. So it was this sort of gobbledygook of edited sounds, little chopped up bits. And then we were like, well, this was a lot of work. Are we going to have to do this for the whole show? And then he heard what we had edited from the first one, and then he just copied that.
Wow.
So he like physically chopped up his own voice while he was doing it and just crammed all these different sounds together.
This is the guy who could sound like a whole flock of turkeys by himself, though, right?
Yeah.
So
no,
he's
amazing.
got skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was a great cast.
Mm-hmm. And who is the main cast of The Weekenders?
Weekenders was Jason Marsden, Phil LaMarr, Gray Delisle, and Kath Soucie. Mm-hmm. And then a bunch of... Jeff Bennett was a bunch of characters on. He was a bunch of characters on Dave the Barbarian, too.
And of course, Gray Delisle has done everything, and she's everywhere.
Yeah, that was... I feel like Weekenders might have even been her first lead role.
Really?
Like, it was fairly early.
Yeah.
So she did Weekenders, and then after that, she did every other cartoon that was ever made.
Yeah.
She's in everything.
It's like her and Candy Milo.
Candy
Milo is just in everything.
And Kari Walgren is in so much stuff.
And then Jason Marsden, who was he was Max in the Goofy movie.
Yeah.
And
he was in many things.
Of stuff.
He was
Will
on Boy
and
Meets
Gray,
World and
Will and Grace.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been a whole bunch of stuff.
Robot Jocks was a movie he was
but
in.
Kat Soucie, I haven't heard a lot of her.
Kat Soucie was in everything. She's still working. She was at least two of the main characters in Rugrats.
Yeah.
Which is probably what she's best remembered for. But she was another person who was in like every
Just
show.
I've never seen her.
Yeah,
around.
No, you haven't seen her in person. You've heard her many times.
Oh, sure.
And she's a little bit like Gray Delisle in that you wouldn't necessarily recognize her voice.
Yeah, because they're so...
She sounds really different from
Yeah.
one thing to another. It's not like a super distinctive, unusual voice. It's just she can do
a lot with
everything.
It. Yeah.
So she did kids and she did babies on Rugrats, and she did like old people and witchy voices and like big giant person voices and just like everything.
And then Phil LaMarr,
Yeah.
wasn't he the guy in the back seat in Pulp Fiction
Yes.
who they accidentally shot and then they had to like clean the car?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he does kids cartoons.
Yeah, he was in the Groundlings.
He was in Pee-wee's Playhouse, right? Wasn't he?
He was in the production that we saw. Yeah, the stage production of Pee-wee's
Oh, that's
Playhouse.
right. But originally it was Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw that on stage at the theater in on Figueroa.
Yeah.
Not the Staples Center. They changed the names every few years because of sponsors.
It was like the Microsoft Theater or something
it was the
at the
Novo
time.
or the something. Yeah.
But it's something else now.
Yeah.
It's
Nokia.
Downtown Live, I think, is what they call that area.
It was the Nokia Theater, I
Yes,
think.
you're right.
So, anyway. Carry on.
I was doing a show with Brian Palermo, who also did some voices on various shows and has written cartoons. But
He's
Brian,
one of those actors who's in everything.
You've seen him in stuff. And he's phenomenal. And I've had him write scripts for me and do voices for me. And I did a show with him. He and I did a sketch show at the Groundlings because he was
the Dog and Brain Show.
The Dog and Brain Show. He was there are videos available on YouTube. He was in the Groundlings. I was not, but he was allowed to like use the space on off nights. So we did our show there. And I met Phil, like just hanging out at the Groundlings, and I was like, oh, he would be super good for Carver. Why did I say Carter? For Carver. And we brought him in, and it was like, I think people were a little bit like, but he's got kind of a deep voice. Like, how's he going to play a kid? And I was like, I don't think it really matters. Also, like, have you talked to 12-year-olds?
Yeah.
Like, a lot of them have super deep voices already. Like, a lot of, like, boys and girls' voices have deepened at that point.
Mine got deep.
So we had him do it. He did it kind of light, and then we pitched him up a tiny bit, and it was fine. And actually, it was sort of like the Frank Welker thing. When he heard what he sounded like pitched up, he just naturally started imitating that.
Right.
And then we didn't even have to pitch him up anymore.
Cool.
But yeah, I know sometimes people get... There's a thing in cartoons where characters usually look much younger than characters that age would. Like, so 12-year-olds in cartoons tend to look like more like 8-year-olds.
I know. And because the other thing in these shows, like the 17-year-old daughter is usually like way shorter than the mom. But it was like, I've been taller than my mom since I was like 8. Yeah. So why do they make the teenagers so short?
I always think it's weird, but it is one of those things. And I think it's because adults imagine kids being smaller and younger looking and higher pitched voices than they actually are.
Yeah.
And adults also sometimes like imagine kids having less of a vocabulary than they do and being just generally less well spoken than kids actually are.
I think my vocabulary was better when I was younger because I was in school and we had vocabulary lessons, and like it was like a mentally stimulating environment. We're just around the house talking casually. I get lazy.
But you'll occasionally see a show like Home Movies, which we should watch that again. I haven't seen that in a long time. But that was a sort of pre-Bob's Burgers, a lot of the same people. And the main kid on the show just had basically a regular adult voice. And I really liked that. So, it originally on Weekenders, we were just going to have them do their normal voices and like not even sound like kids. And then, we changed our mind about that. Although I did see the dubbed version in China, and they all had regular adult voices in the Chinese version for some reason. But there's that thing where adults expect 12-year-olds to sound younger and look younger in cartoons, especially than they do in real life.
If you have the teenagers a little shorter, it shows like a hierarchy with the parents, I guess.
I think it's easier to grasp in a cartoon. I mean, one of the weird things that happens is you'll see a lot of cartoons where the kids, in order to make them look extra young, they've given them giant heads, and the kids will have bigger heads than the adults. Like sometimes a lot bigger. Yeah. And it's like, wow, what is this world where kids' heads shrink by like 70% as they become adults?
I haven't grown into my head yet.
And it's like on a very stylized show like El Tigre. I mean, I think El Tigre's head was 3 times as big as his dad's head. Yeah. But it doesn't matter. The show's super stylized.
Well, you get to see all those expressions.
But it felt weird on Weekenders. I think we wound up making the kids' heads a little smaller and the adults' heads a little bigger because I was just like, it feels so weird to me when there's a kid talking to an adult and their head is bigger. But yeah, that's one of those things. And I mean, one of my things from the beginning on Weekenders was they should talk like adults because every time I talked to a 12-year-old, they talked pretty much like adults. Like, and then so we didn't want to talk down to kids. We didn't want to dumb it down for kids. We wanted to give them full adult vocabularies and have them speak cogently about matters at hand.
Right.
And I know there were some people who were concerned about that. And then one of the questions they asked when they did like market testing about the show was, do you feel that these characters sound like you and your friends? And universally kids said yes.
Yeah.
Because I don't know why there's this tendency to want to dumb stuff down for kids.
I don't agree with that.
No, kids don't like it.
No, and that's how you learn. If
Yeah.
there's a word you don't know, you hear a word you don't know and you're like, okay, then I'm learning a new word today.
Yeah.
That's the way it happens.
And I think partly, as a consequence of that, well, I mean, we usually cast adults to play kids.
Mm-hmm.
You and I prefer that. I've done both on different shows. I mean, it's not always my decision. And I've worked with some younger actors who were phenomenal.
Like Josh Rush.
Like Josh Rush. I can't remember how old he was when he started doing Puss in Boots, but he was amazing.
Yeah, I think he was like 15 or 16 by the time it was over.
Yeah, he was.
That's one of the leads on Andy Mack.
Yeah. And Jensen Panettiere on The X's was great. It was like, seemed like an elderly comedian in the body of a teenage kid.
Who was the little girl on Puss in Boots? Her name was Arabella.
Oh yeah, Arabella. I can't remember her last name right now. But yeah, she was super fun. And you do see shows like Recess where they have some adults doing kid voices and some kids doing kid voices, and it's a mix, and it works.
Yeah.
One of the things, it was very common when we did Weekenders for all of the kid voices to be women. And we had men do the male characters and women do the female characters, which was not as common at that time. And I think it worked. But, you get used to hearing the sort of stereotypical cartoon boy voice is a girl.
Arabella McKenna.
Yeah.
McKenna.
Yeah. She was great. Super sweet.
Oh, wow. Look at her now. She's all grown up.
She's an adult human now.
Yeah, she was like 4 or something when she did it.
Well, that will happen.
How does that happen?
I don't know.
Okay. So who is someone that you would like to work with who you have never worked with before?
Oh, boy. That is a tricky one.
I would have to say Tim Curry.
You would have to say Tim Curry, yes. And he's great. You would love it so much.
I would have to take downers that day to get through it. If anyone's ever been around me at a concert, I get kind of worked up when I'm listening to music, like live music.
Yeah.
But that's what he's like, live music in a person.
This is kind of weird, but I'm going to say Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah. He did a voice on The Simpsons. He was like a substitute teacher that Lisa liked.
Yeah, so he was great in Kung Fu Panda. And then when I worked on the series, and Fred Tatasciore did the voice for the series, who was also fantastic. But I don't know. There was something about Dustin Hoffman. I think he seems like a very thoughtful actor. I think it would be super interesting.
Which reminds me, we were going to watch Hook tonight.
Oh, yeah. Maybe that's why he was on my mind.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would be great to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim Curry. I wonder if you can get Brendan Fraser these days.
He's gotten so hot again.
He's had his renaissance.
Yes.
I just want to say for some of us, he never left.
Yes.
So.
No, I always thought he was great, and he would be. That would
be
be
a good
pretty
actor,
awesome.
yeah.
Most of the famouses that I've worked with, it just sort of happened. It wasn't really.
We did
intentional.
get John Leguizamo to do an episode of Puss in Boots.
Yes.
So he was really good.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah.
He's so good at voiceover.
Yeah. No, he is a really nice person too.
Yeah, he's super nice.
And then from a more down to earth angle, I would love to work with Darcy Rose Burns.
Yes.
She's voices in like Spirit Riding Free and Sophia the First and stuff. But
Yeah.
and she's doing a stage production of Reefer Madness right now. But we know her from stand up, and she does a musical act, and she's super funny. And we have the same singing teacher. But it worked better for her. So I would love to work with her. She's really nice. I remember at the beginning of COVID when I was having, I didn't know it, but I had eroded away my esophagus
Yes.
and couldn't eat. And we went to the store in the midst of all of the COVID panic.
The panic buying.
Yes, and all of the soup and broth was gone, and the only thing I could eat was broth.
Yeah.
And I was like, kind of panicking. I was like, I might seriously go hungry.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't swallow.
Yeah.
And she sent some broth over for
Yeah.
me, and it was so sweet because I had posted a picture on Facebook of all the empty shelves.
Yeah.
And she sent over broth.
Yeah. A few people brought us broth.
Yeah,
That was very nice of her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that was, that made me all teary because
Yeah.
it was one of those moments when like, oh my God, friends are pitching in and helping. And like in today's society, you don't have a lot of opportunity to do stuff like that for
Yeah.
people because everything is so convenient. And,
Yeah.
and that was really sweet.
Yeah.
Another person I would like to work with, it would be Luke Mullen, because we developed a show with him that has not yet sold, and he's great, and he's
Yeah.
a great actor. He was in Andy Mack. He played he was like a bully basketball player, which is hilarious because in real life he is the nicest person on
Yeah.
earth. Yeah, I think that would be fun to get to actually work with him
Yeah.
again. Yeah.
We will make that a reality.
Yes, we will. Who else?
I mean, there's so many people we have worked with who we would love to continue working with. Eric Bauza.
Yeah. Paul Rugg.
Yeah. Mallory Lowe.
Yeah.
A lot of great people. Yeah.
Sungwon Cho.
Sungwon Cho,
So great.
who is hilarious. Just so funny. Yeah, Paul Rugg moved. But I imagine he could do stuff remotely if we ever
Yeah.
had anything. Paul Rugg was Chuckles the Silly Piggy, the Dark Lord Chuckles the Silly Piggy on Dave the
Yes.
Barbarian, and also
In real
famously
life.
was Freakazoid
Yes.
and created Freakazoid
Yeah.
and did tons of Animaniacs and many things. And not that long ago he had his own Henson show, the alien talk show host
Yes.
that he did the voice
The
of.
puppet guy.
But Paul's super funny. It would be fun to work with him again.
Yes. And he was Artesius
Artifius
on Puss in Boots.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've been blabbing for over an hour, and I know we're
Yeah.
going to be editing out.
We're going to be
some
editing
of
out
this.
a lot of the dog chewing on a water bottle and so many swears. What sound should we use to bleep the swears this time? I
there's
like to pick
so
a different
many.
one.
There's
Maybe
so
a foghorn.
Maybe a clown horn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
so-
I think the point of all of this is that it's fun to have a group endeavor,
Yes.
even if it's just one person at a time.
Yeah.
Because we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to tell a story. And the voice work is an enormous part of that.
Yeah. That's when the characters really
Yeah.
come to life.
I mean, it's one of those things where I think the audience associates the characters more with the actor than the writers. And it's just like, as a writer, I want to be like, they didn't make up all those words, right? But then, like, you work with someone like for a period of time on a show, and I mean, they really contribute to the character. It becomes theirs
Yeah,
after a while.
it really does.
You really are just writing for the character who, like, you planted the seed, but they watered it.
Yes.
They made it real. It has become their baby by that
Yeah,
time.
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay. On that note, I think it's time to go.
Okay.
All right. Well, Klaus is now asleep
Yes.
and is not snoring. Maybe we should check on him.
I want to reassure everyone that he did not get the cap of the water bottle stuck in his mouth. I always watch.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, thank you for listening.
Thanks.
All righty, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.